me move on. Let me move on to the Epstein files. You said you're the most transparent FBI director in history, so I'm going to put you to the test. In 2024, you were asked by Glenn Beck about Epstein's Black Book. And you said, he asked, who has Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book? And you said, Black Book, FBI. And he said, but who? That is, I mean theirs. And you said, oh, that's under the direct control of the director of the FBI. That's what you said. Was that true, Mr. Patel?
I'll rely on you quoting it accurately. I did that a couple of years ago.
Was it true what you represented to Mr. Beck and the president's supporters out there, or were you lying? Was it true that the Black Book, Epstein's Black Book, was in the possession of the FBI director?
The Black Book was in the possession of the FBI.
Okay, so now that you're the FBI director, you have possession of the Black Book, right?
That index has been released.
So you have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book?
What is known as Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book has been released by us.
And you released it. And let me follow up on Senator Kennedy's question, because he asked you, and I'll be very precise here. You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself? And you said, himself, there's no credible information, none. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And Kennedy, the information we have, again, is limited. And Senator Kennedy said, the answer is no one. And you said, for the information we have. So is it your testimony today that in all the Epstein files, that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked no one to anyone but himself? Is that your testimony, Mr.
I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic anyone else.
Did he traffic any young woman to someone other than himself? That was Mr. Kennedy's question, Senator Kennedy's question.
The information that 3 administrations have had access to have made determinations that there are no investigative leads that were credible to prosecute and investigate any others. I'm specifically stating
whether it's your testimony today.
Well, you just read it, and I said it 10 minutes ago, so let the record reflect my testimony.
I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding, because there are victims like Virginia Guifer who have testified otherwise, who have said otherwise, and you're telling the American people today that the Epstein list is a single name and it's Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we're to believe?
That's not what I'm saying. That's what you're saying, and you can say whatever you want.
Let me ask you this. When Todd Blanche went to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, she said, but did I think these guys were coming for that? I really don't. If you met Epstein, there's no way that this cast of characters, of which it's extraordinary, and some are in your cabinet, who you value as your co-workers, and you know would be with him if he was a creep or because they wanted sexual favors. A man wants sexual favors, he will find that. They didn't have to come to Epstein for that. And the next question Todd Blanche, the president's former criminal defense lawyer, asked is not who in the cabinet, who are you referring to? His question is, so when's the last time you think you were with Mr. Epstein when he got a massage? So let me ask you, who are those cabinet members that Ghislaine Maxwell was referring to that, that were part of this cast of characters associated with Mr. Epstein? Who are they?
The Deputy Attorney General took the aggressive step that no one else did and interviewed Ms. Maxwell for 2 days, and we released the entirety of that transcript.
Who are the cabinet members?
I do not have that transcript in front of me. You're picking it piecemeal. The American public can read the entirety of that.
One last question, because you clearly won't tell us the cabinet members associated with Mr. Epstein. Let me ask you one last question. And that is, right after she gives this testimony in front of an FBI agent, among others, she's transferred to a minimum security prison not suitable for a sex offender like herself. Who made that decision and why?
The Bureau of Prisons.
The Bureau of Decisions made it in
prisons.
The Bureau of Prisons decided on their own, without any consultation with Blanche or anyone else, that they were going to suddenly, after this interview, completely unrelated to this interview, completely unrelated to anything she said, move her to a prison not suitable for a sex offender. You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No. I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of
you're
inmates.
not in the weeds?
What I am doing is protecting this country, providing historic reform, and combating the weaponization of intelligence by the likes of you. And we have countlessly proven you to be a liar in Russiagate, in January 6th. You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised that you continue to lie from your perch and put on a show so you can go raise money for your charade. You are a political buffoon at best.
Well, you can take an internet troll.
Take it to the bank that the FBI is protecting this country and the state and citizens of the California. We are bringing historic reform. Point of order. But all you care about is a child sex predator that was prosecuted by a prior administration, and the Obama Justice Department and the Biden Justice Department did squat. And what did President Trump do? Bring new charges courageously. And what have we done?
Chairman,
you said I'm the most
of
transparent FBI director in history. 33,000 pages of information to you. I challenge you to say anything credibly to the truth. Go ahead and run to the cameras where you want to go now.
Both of you be quiet.
This hearing started as an oversight exchange about the FBI and the Epstein investigation. It ended as one of the most openly hostile confrontations seen in the Senate Judiciary Committee in years, with FBI Director Kash Patel calling Senator Adam Schiff a fraud, a disgrace, and a political buffoon directly to his face during a live hearing. And that moment mattered because it revealed something much larger than a disagreement over Jeffrey Epstein files. It exposed how America's law enforcement institutions are increasingly becoming direct participants in the country's broader political war. The exchange began with Schiff attempting to corner Patel on one of the Internet's most politically explosive subjects. The so-called Epstein files and the long-running public suspicion that powerful individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein escaped accountability. That issue has become enormous in American political culture. For years, online communities, independent media figures, political activists, and even members of Congress have questioned whether influential figures were protected, whether evidence was withheld, and whether federal agencies concealed information involving Epstein's network. Patel himself had previously fueled some of that public speculation before becoming FBI director. Schiff strategically quoted Patel's earlier interview with Glenn Beck, where Patel suggested the FBI director controlled Epstein's black book. That mattered because Schiff's core strategy was credibility. If Patel previously implied major hidden information existed, what now explains the administration's more limited public conclusions? And that contradiction became the center of the hearing. Schiff repeatedly tried to force Patel into answering a very specific question. Did Jeffrey Epstein traffic young women to other powerful individuals? Patel resisted giving the kind of definitive answer Schiff wanted. Instead, he repeatedly framed the issue around prosecutable evidence and investigative credibility, arguing that multiple administrations reviewed the evidence and found no prosecutable cases against additional individuals. That distinction is legally important. In criminal investigations, there is a major difference between rumors, allegations, public accusations, and evidence sufficient for prosecution. But politically, that distinction often collapses. Large portions of the American public no longer trust institutional explanations surrounding Epstein because the case intersects with broader fears involving elite protection, intelligence agencies, political corruption, celebrity power, and unequal justice. And Schiff clearly understood that. One of the hearing's most explosive moments came when Schiff referenced statements allegedly made by Ghislaine Maxwell involving individuals connected to Epstein's social circle, including suggestions involving figures close to government power. That section dramatically raised the stakes because Schiff was no longer merely discussing investigative procedure. He was implying the possibility of politically sensitive associations extending into the highest levels of government. Patel repeatedly refused to engage with Schiff's framing directly and instead emphasized transparency measures already taken by the FBI and DOJ, including releasing transcripts and investigative materials. But the hearing then moved beyond oversight entirely. After Schiff questioned the transfer of Maxwell to a lower security prison following interviews with federal officials, Patel snapped. And what followed was extraordinary for a Senate hearing. Patel directly accused Schiff of lying, weaponizing investigations, fundraising off political theater, and helping drive what he called the weaponization of intelligence. The language was unusually personal even by modern congressional standards. Historically, FBI directors generally maintained a more restrained institutional posture during congressional testimony, even under hostile questioning. That norm has weakened dramatically in recent years. Increasingly, senior law enforcement officials are no longer viewed, or behaving, as politically detached technocrats. They are becoming active participants in America's broader partisan conflict. And that is the deeper significance of this exchange. Because underneath the argument over Epstein was a much larger institutional breakdown. Americans increasingly disagree not just on policy, but on whether the country's investigative institutions themselves can still be trusted. For Trump supporters and many conservatives, agencies like the FBI became symbols of politicized investigations, Russia probe controversies, intelligence leaks, and alleged institutional bias against conservatives. For critics of Trump and Patel, concerns focus on politicization in the opposite direction, selective transparency, attacks on institutional independence, and efforts to discredit oversight itself. This hearing exposed both realities colliding in real time. The exchange also highlighted how the Epstein case itself has evolved into something larger than a criminal investigation. It has become a cultural symbol. To many Americans, Epstein represents the belief that powerful people operate under different rules, institutions protect elites, and full accountability never truly arrives. That explains why even years later, the issue still dominates online political discourse across both left and right-wing media ecosystems. And Patel's aggressive response revealed another important reality. Modern political figures increasingly understand congressional hearings less as legal oversight proceedings and more as media warfare. The goal is no longer simply persuasion inside the room. It is dominating clips, headlines, social media narratives, and partisan audiences afterward. That is why this exchange spread instantly. Not because Americans suddenly learned new facts about Epstein, but because the hearing reflected something many people already feel. That institutional trust in America is collapsing into open tribal conflict, especially around agencies once expected to remain above partisan warfare. And that may be the most important takeaway from this hearing. Because once law enforcement institutions and elected officials openly treat each other as political enemies rather than constitutional counterparts, the public's ability to trust either side becomes increasingly fragile. What do you think? Should FBI directors respond aggressively when they believe lawmakers are politicizing investigations, or does that kind of confrontation further damage public trust in supposedly independent institutions? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value long-form congressional analysis that goes beyond headlines and examines the institutional, constitutional, and political battles shaping America's future, subscribe to Capitol Oversight for more deep oversight coverage and hearing breakdowns.